I'm starting recording for the meeting. If it's okay, we will share the link following the session for everyone to get benefit from the session. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to our session, Strengthening Disability Inclusion in HNO, HRP. It will be about what we have learned during the last years. If you allow, I think now we have our colleague is joining us, so maybe we will start in order to save time. Please feel free to post your comment, question in the chat, and we will try to cover all question during and either during the presentation or during the last session that we will have, last part of the session when we will have a discussion. Thank you. So without actually more delay, I think that we should start. My name is Ahmed Ghanem. I'm a program specialist focusing on disability inclusive humanitarian action, working with UNICEF. And I am also a coordinator with the coordinator of Disability Advisory Group. We will shortly present the group shortly. Of course, it's my pleasure on behalf of the Disability Advisory Group to welcome you here today. As you all know, I think that during the last few years, there have been an effort to make an humanitarian program more responsive to the need of people with disability through focusing on humanitarian program cycle mainly. And under different program and specifically the FCDO in single business case, we will also shortly present this program. Our advisory group is working on conducting several initiatives to strengthen disability inclusion within humanitarian need overview and humanitarian response plan. We will use this abbreviation as you see from our title, the humanitarian need overview and humanitarian response plan. I'm sure that all of you have a good understanding, but also I have posted the abbreviation. It's about humanitarian needs overview and humanitarian response plan as a part of humanitarian program cycle. Actually, this session is aiming to introduce the progress of strengthening disability inclusion in HNO, HRP, and share insights about good practice and evidence from disability inclusion review and lesson learned within the past cycle of HNO, HRP at countryside. So if we go directly for the beginning of the session, today we will have our speaker today. I will be joining you and also our colleague Tom Palmer from with inclusion advisor at humanitarian action at Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office, FECDO. Our colleague Kristen Lang also from we are program specialist disability inclusion in humanitarian action with UNICEF, and our colleague Ricardo with the protection officer focusing on disability inclusion with UNHCR. Today we will have a small presentation in the beginning, but we focusing more in participation. So we are keen to hear your opinion, questions, comment. We will have two polls also to discuss, to initiate the discussion. And at the end of the session, we will have 20 to 25 minutes dedicated for this discussion. So if you allow me to start, I think we are now nearly 44, so we will start. If I will launch a poll and I will give you time to answer it now. As you see now in your screen, we are asking you, in your opinion, to which extent did 2020 HNO HRB at country level integrating disability inclusion? I'm talking about last year, last cycle, not the current cycle. In your opinion, to which extent these documents at different countries have integrating disability inclusion within the document itself? Thank you. So we have now, until now, 26 voted. They will give some time for it. Of course, we understand that from country to country there was a different situation. However, we want just to have your overall opinion about it. Thank you.
And Ricardo speaking, please don't be shy. Vote. There's an option as well for I don't know, and vote what you really think. Not feeling the pressure of others. Right?
So I think that we could have some launching the results. I think most of the people have ending. Okay. Okay. I will take just a screenshot of it because we will back to it. Okay. So as you see, there are some difference opinion about it. 44% nearly, or 45% said to some extent we have disability inclusion, 5% substantially, which is great, 3% very much, and 47% I don't know. So we will back to this result again, but now I think I will close 1 second result. So we will back to this result again, but now I want to go to the today's session just to give you an idea what we have today. Actually, we have today 3 main topic. We will discuss the progress of disability inclusion in HNO HRP. We will discuss the lesson learned and good practice and share the challenge that we have learned in the last 3 years. And also we will have some resources to support disability inclusion in HRP. We will go through it. So we, 1 second. So this is the pool. So now we will start with the progress of disability inclusion in HNO HRP, and allow me to ask my colleague Tom to join us and start to discuss a little bit about collaboration among interagency and different agency to achieve the disability inclusion in HNO HRP. Tom, please.
Thank you, Ahmed. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm going to try to start my video as well, although that's not working, so I'll just I'll carry on. Do let me know if you can't hear me. So as Ahmed said, my name is Tom Palmer, and I'm a advisor on inclusion and humanitarian action for the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. And I want to start by thanking Ahmed and the colleagues from the Disability Advisory Group for inviting me to represent FCDO at this event. The FCDO is proud to have been able to contribute to this endeavour, which has really achieved genuine progress on disability inclusion in the humanitarian programme cycle. However, the real credit goes to the agencies and the individuals who comprise this interagency group, whose commitment, cooperation, hard work and expertise has led to real improvements that we see in humanitarian needs overviews and response plans. The history of this endeavour is longer than mine with FCDO, so forgive me if I don't get all the details correct, but I'll do my best to describe how this initiative came about. There was a confluence of factors back. Oh, I'm being alerted to start my video. Let's see if this works. Never mind, we'll carry on. Back in 2016-17, DFID, as it was then, before it became the FCDO, was working with its humanitarian UN partners to develop a joint results framework for the UK's contribution to their core funding. This is called a single business case in the DFID jargon. The majority of this funding is unearmarked, but there is a small tranche which is contingent on the achievement of shared milestones relating to key reform priorities. And around this same time, the UK was preparing to co-host the Global Disability Summit, which happened in 2018. And DFID was also in the process of developing a disability inclusion strategy. So this meant that there was significant ministerial buy-in to have disability inclusion reflected in this results framework for the core funding to the UN agencies. Also around the same time, the UN Secretary General issued an instruction regarding the need to do more on disability inclusion, and this provided further incentive. Recognition really should go to UNICEF, who worked closely with colleagues at DFID at an early stage to develop the specific indicator relating to disability inclusion in HNOs and HRPs, which was then refined by a working group involving all agencies, which then later became the Disability Advisory Group. And with ongoing coordination by UNICEF. And it really helped at that time as well that DFID was also supporting humanity and inclusion to test the Washington Group short set of questions in humanitarian settings and developing training materials, which would really prove useful in the course of this work. I wasn't around when all of this was being discussed, but I did speak to a colleague who was, and she told me the following about why this initiative worked so well. She said, by identifying an opportunity to embed an indicator which spoke to a priority for all agencies and finding a pragmatic balance between the needs of the results framework, we were able to shape an indicator which stood to reflect the transformational change we needed. The leadership, engagement, and enthusiasm from all involved to come together and take advantage of the opportunity to leverage the diverse and extensive experience and knowledge of all involved seemed to be the keys to the success. The mechanism and the opportunity was the single business case. The motivation and means to deliver was the passion and commitment of everyone who participated in that working group. And in my opinion, and I'm indeed biased as I have an interest in this particular area of reform, but more than any other of the payment by results indicators in that results framework, this one has led to a focused, coordinated interagency effort, which has delivered measurable improvements to the humanitarian program cycle. I wonder if that effort would have happened without the indicator. It's difficult to say, but certainly the achievements would not have happened without the leadership and initiative of UNICEF and without the energy and technical expertise of colleagues from OCHA, UNHCR, IOM, WFP, and HI, and many others to produce guidance, conduct the analysis, and deliver the training and technical support in real time, which we're going to hear more about in this session. So I'll finish there, Ahmed, and hand back to you. But thanks again for inviting me to join this session. I look forward to hearing from you and the others. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for your valuable intro. And I think that it was very clear that we have a very a strong initiative, multi-agency effort that have lead to systematic effort to do improve disability inclusion under a one joint goal, which I think this is, as you said, the indicator and joint goal is one of the key factors for collaboration and coordination. I will jump to give some idea about what Tom was saying about what happened in the last 3 years in supporting disability inclusion within HNO HRP, and I will move to my colleague Kristen from UNICEF to go with us in the timeline about that. Kristen, please.
Great, thank you, Ahmed. Thank you. So I'm just going to build a little bit on what you've already heard from Tom just a minute ago. So as Tom mentioned, the advisory group was set up in 2018. At the time, that group was made up of UNICEF, UNHCR, WFP, IOM, OCHA, and WHO. We've since been joined by the International Disability Alliance and also Humanity and Inclusion, which has really helped to strengthen the group. So when the group was first set up in 2018, one of our first tasks was to define very clearly what we meant by the target. So what does disability inclusion in HNOs and HRPs really look like concretely? And what were we concretely going to measure our progress against? So that was really one of our important first tasks. In 2018, we also conducted a baseline review of how disability inclusion was being integrated into HNOs, HRPs. And this was a really important process for us to understand what were some of the good practices that we wanted to see being more systematized across all of the HNOs, HRPs. What were some of the gaps that were there that we were hoping to address through this initiative, and also to provide that baseline to see how we were progressing. That review also fed into the development of the guidance document, which is now one of the key products from this initiative. So that guidance document sets out how disability inclusion can concretely and should concretely be integrated into the HNOs and HRPs. So that guidance has a very strong focus on data, but it does also address issues beyond data. We also worked very closely with OCHA, and through an OCHA-led process, that guidance was also reflected in the 2020 HNO HRP templates and the 2019 HNO HRP templates, I believe, at that time. And at the same time, we ensured that the guidance was very much structured according to the HNO HRP templates. So really ensuring that we were setting up the process to ensure that the guidance could easily be implemented in the development of the HNOs, HRPs. At the same time, we were also providing support to countries on how to implement that guidance in practice through development of the HNOs, HRPs. And to support that process, we also developed some tip sheets, some very brief tip sheets that were more accessible to country teams than the larger guidance document. Coming to 2020, we were conducting another review of disability inclusion in the HNOs, HRPs to identify how far we'd come, what progress we'd made since 2018, and also to look at what were the remaining gaps that we needed to focus on going forward. So to inform that review, we really refined the quality criteria for how disability inclusion should be reflected in HNOs, HRPs. And that was very much informed by the work over the past 2 years of the group. We can go on to the next slide, Ahmed. So also in 2020 was a big year for the group. So in addition to conducting that review of the HNOs, HRPs, we also, of course, had the COVID pandemic. And so the group shifted focus a little bit towards supporting disability inclusion in the Global Humanitarian Response Plan, the GHRP for COVID. And part of that process was to develop a tip sheet for how disability inclusion can be reflected in the monitoring framework in the GHRP. So up until this point, we hadn't provided very, very concrete guidance yet on monitoring, and specifically how disability inclusion should look in monitoring frameworks. So COVID-19 really provided us a good opportunity to delve into this issue a little bit deeper. So we developed that tip sheet. Another thing that we embarked on in 2020 was shifting the focus a little bit beyond the HNO HRP documents themselves. And we started to explore what is happening at the country level. So we conducted a lessons learned exercise, which you'll hear about a little bit later today, where we aim to really explore what are the different factors that facilitate the inclusion of disability in the HNO HRP documents. What are the factors that hinder that process? So really better understanding what's happening at the country team level, what's happening with the clusters at country level. And we'll hear more about that, as I mentioned. We also continued, of course, the support to disability inclusion at country level. And that was this support to the countries level. We really saw the benefit of having all the agencies coming together, particularly given that every agency has their country offices, has their outreach at that ground level. So we were really able to build on that dynamic. In 2020, we also collaborated with OCHA, and we had, I believe it was 2 modules on disability inclusion within the regular OCHA training for the humanitarian program cycle. Now, given the COVID pandemic in 2020, that was all online, which actually did provide us with an opportunity to reach a wider audience. So we developed some online capacity building material for the HPC. In 2021, so this year, We have also very recently released a self-assessment tool for country teams to assess how disability is included in the HNOs, HRPs. So up until this point, you've heard me speak about the advisory group doing the assessment of how disability is included in the HRPs. With this tool, we really aim to empower the country teams to do that assessment themselves and to really see for themselves where they have opportunities to strengthen disability inclusion in those documents. And we are once again preparing for the review of the 2021 HNOs, HRPs to again see what further progress has been made and what gaps we still need to address. That's it from my side. Thank you, Ahmed.
Thank you, Kristen, for your input and for the great journey that we have now. I will share again the card on the competition link on the chat for everyone. Sorry for that. Yes. So I think that after this timeline, I think that it's great to see to back again to our pool. If you remember our pool, I will share the result again. If you remember, we have nearly 45% say to some extent, and we have less percentage said very much and substantially, and a lot say I don't know. And it will be great to see together now how this happened actually on the ground. So we have actually some main lesson learned, good practice, shared challenges that we want to share with you. And I will start with the disability inclusion review of 2020 HNO HRP, which have been done last year before the COVID actually. So the idea is that during this, we have seen compared to 2018, and we will back to that now, we have seen that in 2020, HNO HRP showed substantial progress in disability inclusion. Actually, we have 75 nearly of HNO include analysis of factor contributing to risk, not only listing person with disability among vulnerable groups. We have like nearly 56% of HRB mentioning disability in result framework, was, as we will see, it was not happening before. And there are a lot of other topics and other specific increase in support. For example, nearly 81% of HNO present a BEN figure disaggregated by disability, person in need figures disaggregated by disability. And as you all know, the BEN figure is the core of the HNO, and having it disaggregated to the disability, of course, it's not enough, but it's a very good first step, which was not happened before. So I will not go through all of them because of the time, and of course I will share all the document that we have talked about and the presentation after the meeting, of course. But it's very important to show how that this progress happened during our work. For example, comparing to 2018, what was the situation of HNO, HRB disability inclusion, according to our review. And also I will share some link to the review, the full review that we have done. For example, in disaggregated of BEN figure in 2018, there was nearly no HNO HRB have a clear disaggregation of BEN figure by disability. In 2020, we have nearly 98%. Analysis of factor of contribution, we have 70% in 2018. In 2020, we have analysis of factor community risk nearly to 75. Also about recognition of this diversity and intersectionality. Persons with disability are not harmonized group. They have a strong diversity among them, and there are a lot of other factors that intersect together to build the needs and the situation of persons with disability and increase risk or decrease risk according to this kind of factor. So in 2018, it was only 11% of the HNO HRB that have this kind of recognition. But in 2020, we have nearly 83, more and more women with disability, children with disability, other refugee with disability have been highlighted. Although, as we will see, the analysis was not strong, but at least it have been recognized. Also, information gap. In 2018, most of HRP was not even know that they have this situation of recognition of information gap about disability. But in 2020, there was nearly 63 of HRP highlighting that they need more data about disability to understand the situation better and to respond better. This happened also, this was in the HNO, but also happened in HRP. Going very fast on it, we have an integration of priority of person with disability comparing to the situation about the consultation of person with disability and their organization. In 28, there was nearly no mention about integration of priority of person with disability and how the HRP have understand the priority of person with disability. In 2020, a lot of HRP was discussing about consulting with some person with disability, less the organization of person with disability, of course, but there was some attention to this integration. Engagement of person with disability also was very limited in 2018 on the process of HRP and the process of feedback mechanism, but in 2020 it have been increased 37%, but it's not a high, but it's an improvement. Also, reflection of twin track approach, understanding the disability and how the combination and the interaction between specialized response and mainstreaming and inclusion response also was very prominent in 2020 comparing to 28. And also monitoring of disability inclusion as a part of HRP was very limited, and it have been very strong in monitoring of disability inclusion. Before, I saw some question in the answer about the consultation of person with disability and obstacles of this consultation. We will of course handle this question during discussion, but when I go for summit challenge, I think this will cover that. It was not only the progress that we have seen. As you see, the percentage is not 100%. And also there was a lot of a challenge in 2020 HNO HRP. Yes, we have a progress comparing to 2018, but in 2020 and until now, we still have some problem. Analysis of factor contributing to risk to person with disability was limited to some extent. Understanding these factors, understanding how it affects person with disability. Differentiation of person with disability from other vulnerable group. You know, this kind of approach to categorize all the vulnerability in category with and putting list of vulnerable groups without really understand what is the difference and what is the specific situation of every group and how the vulnerability actually happen is very important. Recognition also of coping mechanism, either positive or negative, and the capacities of person with disability. And I think this is also one of the obstacles to consultation and participation of person with disability. The understanding of the positive coping mechanism and the high capacities of person with disability to participate maybe is still limited, and this is also could be some barrier for this consultation and participation. Inclusive process of consultation. Actually, most of the people in need consultation and consultation, participation, accountability for affected population, most of this mechanism is still not very accessible, and the process itself is not inclusive. Our ability to reach to a local OBD organization of persons with disabilities is still limited at country level, and sometimes it's not considered within the process itself. Availability of data was also one of the problem, either and using of global prevalence as a one of the last resource, because there was no local or national data. Also, there are limited disability inclusion analysis, limited using of twin track approach, and also to which extent understanding, to which extent the choice of response modality, for example, cash, to which extent this choosing of response modality will affect person with disability. This kind of analysis is still not as strong as we hope. However, we understand that the progress that's happening is as a step forward, and also as we understand this challenge, it gives us an opportunity to work on improving this, as we will see from the lesson learned. So I will move to my colleague Ricardo to discuss the lesson learned which have been done at country level to understand what happened in HNO HRP process. Ricardo?
Thank you, Ahmed, and sharing some of the lessons that we learned through the process. As it was mentioned by Kirsten in the timeline, there was a moment when we wanted to well, stop for a minute, and well, we couldn't stop actually, but take additional time on the responsibilities that we had and go back to where in which countries there had been some change, some substantial change, where there was opportunities as well to because we had entry points, because we had contacts in country, and because there was some trace, right, of communications that we could take over again and see what had happened and but more how had happened, right? What were the changes and what was what were the driving forces that were changing what had happened? We established 5 criteria. That's it, Ahmed, and it's displayed now. We wanted to know first, well, how the guidance was used. The second was the participation, and I will come as well to that and link with the question that Veronique made in the chat. The participation of persons with disabilities and their organizations, then how data was collected and used, what were the country team dynamics and the leadership, and what was the role in well, leveraging interest and as well making humanitarian country teams more accountable to disability inclusion, and then monitoring how impact was being monitored. I will be sharing some of the highlights of that lessons learned document that can be accessed in different languages. It is translated and it will be shared at the end of the call as well. So going to the use of technical guidance, what we found was that, well, global guidance is useful. It sets the framework, but it is not alone. I mean, it's not enough if it's alone, right? If it's the only resource. We saw some very good practices being put in place in Ukraine and Central African Republic, for example, where there was a contextualized guidance, where what had been developed was contextualized and made relevant and in local languages as well to facilitate coordination. And the second aspect was capacity building as well. What is usually where there was an entry point for humanitarian country teams receiving information on disability inclusion during the training, and that's why we did as well last year, then there would be better results because they would come back to their countries, or if that training happened abroad, that was the case, and if not, if they received that in country, they would come with that priority in their hands and their planning. The second aspect in participation, as mentioned by Veronique, the engagement of DPOs or organizations of persons with disabilities was not very high, but we tried to find where it happened, how it happened, and how it could be improved. What we found was that there is a need to find a right balance between the opportunities that OPDs bring in terms of continuity and the advocacy reach they have. Usually they are national members, they stay in countries, while humanitarian teams many times turn over and there's information that is being lost. OPDs can be a central center of information and can keep the agenda constantly in the humanitarian country team, but when they are involved. And the problem is sometimes that, well, DPOs may not be involved in humanitarian issues because they do not have enough capacity to follow those issues. And the national agenda, it is already taking a lot of time. And the second is humanitarian dynamics themselves, right? Sometimes language is very difficult to follow. Communications are in a foreign language. They happen very fast, and there's very few opportunities for DPOs to get meaningfully engaged. Regarding data collection, well, the availability of primary data has been one of the key issues, but what was interesting to see is that global estimates are used more and more, and that leads as well to questions in terms of, well, we need more data, right? It is still a good entry point. However, we saw as well that when data is collected and the Washington Group questions were more and more used, and it has been a trend across many countries, not only these 4 countries, they may be used, but sometimes they are not understood correctly. So capacity building and the sustainability of that capacity building, so planning again, turnover, etc., is very, very important. And another factor that we saw interesting as well is, well, data use. There's many questions around, well, what do we do with this data? And we shouldn't giving room to biases in terms of, well, if it's not useful, why collecting it, etc. Those discussions, at least I do not support them directly. But what is interesting, what we saw is that when the data, the purpose of data was well defined, when you collect data on disability in monitoring, then that's it, that's the purpose. But there were as well dedicated purposes. For example, barriers data collection. So data on barriers to access services, etc. That type of dedicated data collection produce information that is manageable because it's meaningful. Regarding the driving forces, the country team dynamics, what is the role of leadership? We saw an array of different approaches. We had from very strong, committed humanitarian coordinators, which it was a very interesting factor to drive the agenda, with the risk of then turnover. Then having a dedicated disability advisor. So for example, there were countries where donor support had ensured a seconded disability advisor, producing as well quality materials and a sustainability of the conversations. And then working groups on disability, age and disability, etc., which were as well a good approach. What we thought and saw that where best results can be achieved is when there is a combination of all. There's strong leadership, technical skills, but then a continuity as well of the discussion that is kept, even if there's some turnover of staff. And finally, the monitoring. Well, a key aspect is that reporting from members of the clusters and operational members to see what has been the impact, what has been achieved, is still the key and is missing in many places. Reporting through disaggregated data can be incentivized, and it would be interesting to incentivize at country level. However, it presents in itself some challenges. For example, when data is collected at household level and the tools that we use collect data at individual level, that is one of the first issues. Other issues that more qualitative that we identified were as well stigma around disability, being hidden in the household, but as well in discussions in country dynamics as well, in terms of, well, how stigma can be very difficult or a barrier to monitoring adequately and to have reliable data, right? Because that layer of invisibility that stigma may pose, it can be a barrier. We'll stop here and pass over to Ahmed to continue.
Thank you, Ricardo, for this. Of course, the lesson learned report will be shared also today with the presentation, with full lesson have been learned and how we gathered it from these countries. So the question now is what next? What we will do next? And I think this is also will link to some questions that have been asked in the chat, but also what we will do. Actually, currently, we are carrying out a review of disability inclusion in 2021, HNO HRP, that have been mostly concluded in most of the country, with also supporting OCHA 2020 multi-partner review related to disability. As you know, every year OCHA is doing their own multi-partner review for full HNO HRP, and we try to support the process of disability inclusion in this review, besides the review that we will do. And I think this year will be very interesting to see to which extent COVID-19 and the situation that we have last year and all the efforts that have been done have affected disability inclusion within HNO HRP. Also, based on our learning from the previous 3 years, we will produce recommendation for priority area to focus to strengthen disability inclusion and humanitarian coordination. This recommendation will be more practical tool to see how we can do that. Also, establishing tools, process, including agreed indicator to measure outcome and impact of disability inclusion of HNO-HRP. As you know, HNO-HRP is the country plan to what they will do in humanitarian response. But what happened after this plan? To which extent the disability inclusion within the document itself, within the response plan and need overview have lead to real change on the ground. I think this will be also very important question to ask. We will not say that we can cover everything, but I think this is at least including agreed indicator will be very important as a first step. Lastly, and most importantly, and thank you, Kristen, for asking for response to Charlotte and Veronica for in the chat. We will try to engage with the reference group actually on inclusion of persons with disability in humanitarian action to strengthen the DBO engagement in HBC. As Kristen was saying, reference group is focusing more in inclusion of persons with disability in humanitarian action in general, with membership of person with disability organization, and we cooperate with them now to ensure that we have a twin track approach again. Building the capacities of country teams and the process itself to ensure that it's an inclusive process from one side. So to ensure that we have a chair on the table for persons with disability and their organization. And from the other side, building the capacity of the organization of persons with disability to understand the humanitarian process and humanitarian work in order to be able to empower enough to participate. So I think that to make it, I will say clear that it's we believe that without and ensuring that this twin track approach, it will be very difficult to ensure that nothing about us without us will achieve in HNO-HRP. So just warning about the time, I will move to the next question, and I think to the next part, which is mostly about the discussion, but we wanted to launch some poll to ask you about your opinion now, and then we will initiate the discussion and we will respond also to some of your question on the chat. Please feel free to write in the chat what you wanted to share with us. So I'm launching the poll now. Ricardo, if you okay.
Yes, thank you. We have mentioned some lines of interest, and we would like to know, well, what, in your opinion, should be strengthened. There's participation of persons with disabilities, country team dynamics and leadership, capacity building for the country team, strengthening monitoring disability inclusion or disability inclusion in monitoring frameworks, and others you can write as well in chat, and please vote. Don't feel shy. It's anonymous.
And you can choose more than one answer, actually.
Exactly.
Feel free to write in the chat if you have, in your opinion, another support or line of support that you feel that is missing here. Please put it in the chat. I can see from the most of the question, it was focusing on the ability of persons with disability to participate on the process itself. And also to which extent the person with disability organization have been invited to the process. I think this is so participation of person with disability is always a big issue. However, we know also from the lesson learned that the country team dynamics and leadership is playing a big role, and capacity building also of country team, to which extent they understand the inclusion, as Malian was saying in her chat, in her point of view, and also disability inclusion in monitoring. So we have now 30 answers from our group. So
it is. I think it is interesting to see that there is an overall agreement that participation is key, right? And it is actually one of the key gaps that we saw in the review. Just sharing in voice what has been shared, there are initiatives in place, and there's the Disability Reference Group, the International Disability Alliance engagement, and through their members at regional level. It needs still to be translated more into national level, and it has been happening in some countries, but it's something that can improve, and the Disability Reference Group will be working on it as well. But we wanted to hear as well from you. I think.
Yeah, I will share it now. Unfortunately, I have to stop it to share. So
Sorry,
this
I
is the
could
result.
see the results, but not
yes.
you. So.
Yeah. So as you see, Ricardo, if you wanted to comment on the results.
Yes, as I was saying, I think the agreement is around participation of persons with disabilities, and bringing that will entail bringing national DPOs on board in terms of humanitarian action. There is something that I used to say when I hear colleagues saying, yeah, but there's no DPO in the region. Well, honestly, I haven't seen a single place where at this a local DPO has no presence, right? A different aspect may be that there's no capacity, or that there's no particular focus on humanitarian issues, and there is where we can give a hand to bring that capacity with support, training, etc. I mean, it is not an easy task, but it is something doable, and it shouldn't be excused to say, well, there's no DPOs, then we go ahead, right? Even if it at another speech is something that we can do. I don't know if there would be other ways as well, or if we would like Ahmed to open the discussion as well, if other colleagues would like to share updates, if they would like to share their own plans as well in what do they want to bring forward.
Yeah, thank you, Ricardo. I think that it's let's start with I will read some comment from the chat, and please feel free to step in and raise your question also if you want. We have some comment in the beginning about the participation, and thank you for covering this area. I hope that it's have been covered. Of course, we can talk a lot about the participation, and I will advise that ETHAC guideline for inclusion of persons with disability in humanitarian action have a very strong chapter about person with disability participation and organization of persons with disability participation in humanitarian action in general. Also, we have some discussion about the understanding of disability prevalence and the qualitative assessment of the barrier. This is very important, and in our guideline, actually, we was highlighting more than once that quantitative and qualitative data are very important. Both of them are very important. Quantitative data to understand, because this is how our humanitarian need overview and humanitarian response plan have been built, that you have some numbers, but numbers is not enough. Without understanding the real situation, without doing a vulnerability analysis, without doing some analysis of the environment, the barriers, as you said in Veronica in your comment, it will be very difficult to get information. And actually, as you will see in our guideline, it's some extent, it's not very difficult to collect qualitative data comparing to quantitative one, which we need more, I will say, experience and more resources to be collected. So thank you for that. Also, I agree with the idea of monitoring to start before approval and having the checklist. This is the idea. It's very important to raise the awareness and raising capacity building before even the process and during writing the strategy and the project. Please feel free to jump in and if you have any point, and if you have any also future plan. I will back to the DRR question, but also I wanted to open the discussion about the overall your if you have a comment of what you have said or question, or you have a plan for the future to support disability inclusion in HNO HRP. Please feel free to raise your hand or jump in. So I think I will back to the DRR point, the disaster risk reduction. I totally agree with you, Mylan. Sorry if I'm pronouncing the name in the wrong way. The idea here is that it's very important when we get to deal with a specific group like person with disability in humanitarian action to look to the full picture. It's not only the HNO HRP, it's the full humanitarian program cycle. And the program cycle is much more than the response to after the disaster. It should be risk reduction even before. And the key for successful disaster response or humanitarian action and response is to have a better preparation. And person with disability is among the most group that we could benefit from disaster risk reduction strategies, because the preparation is reducing the vulnerability and reducing the risk factor substantially. So I think that this is a very good point. Thank you for raising it. And I think this should be also considered in our work.
And maybe Ahmed, to complement the connection, well, usually, and this is something that I've seen as well, when there is a good DRR work, of course, first responders are there, and they are national stakeholders as well. And they have information and they have data, and there's ways to facilitating accessing this data. Although with as well a word of cautious of transforming or pressures or making too much pressure on organizations as well to respond and share data, and here linking with what Tushar has shared in the chat box. There has to be as well a respect to let's say not get involved in discussions when there's no capacity. And there should be alternative solutions, and the IAC guidelines have some of them as well. There is also a question to recognize where international or national NGOs that are more sensitive or specialized on disability have national staff that have been staying there for a long time and have access to information, data, etc. Those are as well very good pathways.
Thank you, Ricardo. I totally agree. And also, I will, Tushar, thank you for your comment. Yes, definitely. One of the problem about organizational person with disability is happening that is the interest of the organization of person with disabilities themselves on humanitarian action, to which extent they are involved in the overall process, and to which extent also they are exist on the ground. We know that there are a lot of development contexts that they have no OBD. So it's happened also in most probably in humanitarian, in refugee setting and other setting that we don't have an organization of person with disability. Again, in this case, and as you mentioned in the ITEC guideline, there are a strong advice to reach out to different groups of person with disability, and we can learn a lot from community-based rehabilitation and other development techniques that happen, that focusing on building a self-help group, inviting different persons with disability to be engaged. I think this will be important. So the absence of organizational person with disability is not an excuse for exclusion of person with disability. It should be also some action to ensure that all persons with disability, with all the diversity and all the intersectionality, are represented. If you allow me, I will move to the resources to support disability inclusion, just to have some time to comment on it. So in these resources, and I will share the presentation. I will try to share the presentation on the chat. and if not, I will share it by email for all of you today or tomorrow maximum. We have several resources, but if you allow me, actually, I wanted to highlight what is these resources. Actually, our main resource is guidance on strengthening disability inclusion and humanitarian response plan that have been developed by the UN FSDO single business case, as we have described in the beginning. This is the main resources and main guidance for us, and it's following the process of HNO, HRP, and started to give some advice in every step. Also, we have tip sheets in integration disability in HNO, HRP, if you have less time to read the full guidance. We have the tip sheet for monitoring disability inclusion in COVID-19, but it's actually very applicable to HRP also. And then the self-assessment tool that have been introduced by Kristen, which is toward the country teams themselves, that is could be there. Thank you, Isabel. Of course, I will share it also in inclusion virtual exception, and I will encourage all you. There are great resources there, so I will share it most of it today in the virtual exception. And then we have the disability inclusion in HBC, which was a training that done interagency training with full modules, 2 modules. And then we have the lesson learned. And of course, I cannot stress more on the ISAC guideline for inclusion of persons with disability in humanitarian action, which have wider perspective on the full picture of in humanitarian action. And I will strongly advise you to have a look to this document, specifically the guidance and the ISAC guideline. Thank you, of course, for your time. If anyone of our colleague, Ricardo, Tom, if you have any closing remark or of any of the attendants. Coming to the end, I would like to express also my appreciation to speakers, to all of you for your valuable contribution. We try to make it a short 1 hour session to not to be very heavy for everyone. I know that all of you are very busy, and I'm certain that the takeaway from this session will further deepen our thinking and collaboration in working in disability inclusion. Thank you all, and I wish you a great day. And thank you for your participation and great comment.